Have you ever sat in that heavy silence at a family dinner? Here on Women's Life Stories, we retell those moments, honest, everyday, sometimes controversial. Every story is a mirror. Subscribe, join the conversation, and maybe find a little healing. The morning light over Lake Washington looked like brushed steel, flat and cold. I woke with the taste of old sleep on my tongue and my scalp aching where hair should have been. When I sat up, gray stubble rasped against my palm. The mirror on the closet door wore a haze of steam, but it did not hide the truth. My head was bare, not a haircut, a stripping. On the nightstand lay a small cream card that smelled like cedar. The ink was a mossy green, the handwriting neat enough to pass as kind. "Now you finally look the part, you old busybody. Happy birthday." I read it twice. The words were a hand on my throat. Air went slow. In the bathroom drawer, tucked beside the nail scissors, I found the clipper. It held a few threads of silver caught in the teeth. The metal was cold. From the window, I could see the lake in its calm mood. A gull sketched its way across the water. Somewhere on the island, a fairy horn sounded. I pressed 2 fingers to my skull. The skin there felt new, almost damp, as if I had been peeled and set out to dry. The house was quiet. The clock in the kitchen ticked with the stubbornness of old things. I set the card on the counter and made tea by habit. Steam rose. The smell of jasmine curled at the edges of the cedar. The card's paper had a faint tooth to it, that expensive texture you feel more than see. Capitol Hill had a shop that embossed initials into envelopes. Tessa liked it there. She had once gushed over their inks while I signed the receipt. I picked up the card and thought about tearing it. My hand did it before my mind decided. The halves drifted down like pale leaves. I stared at them, then reached for tape. I pressed the halves back together, careful to align the insult. Evidence breathes better when it looks whole. I called June. "Evie, are you up? I need you to stop by Eaton's on your way," I said. "Ask for wigs, short styles, brown, red, anything. Do not ask questions at the store." Silence. What happened? "Just bring them and knock, not ring." I ended the call. My thumb left a crescent on the screen. The shower hissed to life. I stepped in and let the hot water knock against my skull. It stung where tiny hairs met skin. After a minute, I turned the handle until the water ran cold. My breath shortened. I stayed until my toes went numb. Cold has a use. It forces a choice. "She will not win," I said, and my voice sounded like someone I would listen to. I dressed in a robe and carried the taped card to my office. The desk held a glass paperweight with a bubble inside it. I set the card beneath the glass. The bubble looked like an eye over the insult. Carter answered on the second ring. "Briggs." "It is Evelyn Reed," I said. "Cancel the transfer scheduled for tonight, all of it. Then prepare a change to my will. I want you at my house before noon with drafts." A pause. "Are you safe, Mrs. Reed?" "I am awake," I said. "Bring your black folio." We ended there. I walked through the rooms while the house woke around me. Contractors would arrive in the afternoon to string lights. Caterers would bring glass and silver. On the patio, the pavers still held last night's rain in their dips. Camellia leaves shone with wet. The sky looked undecided, which meant Seattle would probably choose both rain and sun. The door opened and June slid in with a paper bag pressed to her chest. She took one look at me and dropped the bag on the table. "Oh," she said, then swallowed. "Evie, tea?" I asked. She nodded. When I opened the bag, 3 heads of hair looked back at me. One auburn bob with soft bangs, one salt and pepper pixie, one sleek black cap. I lifted the auburn and set it against my scalp. The net scratched. I set it down. "You are not going to wear it," June said. "No, they will talk." "They already do." June reached for my hand. She held it for a quiet count, then let go and took out cups. The steady little chores saved us from too many words. The makeup artist arrived with a rolling case at 9. She paused at the threshold when she saw my head, then stepped forward as if invited. "Would you like a scarf?" she asked, "or we can keep it natural." "Make my eyes clear," I said. "That is all." She nodded. Her brushes moved with small confidence. I watched the room in the mirror more than my reflection. The pale rug, the window needled with a fresh sprinkle. When she was done, my face belonged to me again. The bare scalp did not. Carter came at 10 with the folio under his arm. He stood in the kitchen and listened while I told him enough. He did not ask for the parts I did not offer. He set the draft of the new will on the table and slid a pen toward me. "This version establishes Silver Harbor Foundation," he said. "The purpose is specific. The board structure is sound. I can file incorporation documents today. We will keep a sealed original here and one at my office. I read every line. The letter swam once, then settled. I signed. Carter gathered the papers with quick, precise hands. Are you certain? He asked. Yes. He placed a clean envelope in the center of the table and pressed his palm over it for a second as if to warm it. I will return before guests arrive, he said. In case. The party crew showed up in a line of white vans. Men with calm faces rolled out tables. 2 women hung strings of bulbs along the beams. I walked among them, my head uncovered, my steps steady. A server looked up and his gaze flicked to my scalp, then to my eyes. I smiled at him. He flushed and smiled back. The manager checked the list with me. Past appetizers at 7, champagne station at the patio doors, your toast at 8. Any changes, Mrs. Reed? No changes, I said. In the dining room, I hung a single empty frame on the far wall. It was walnut smooth to the touch. The hook clicked into place. The frame waited perfect and blank. In the den, I opened the armoire and slid the sealed envelope to the back of a drawer. Upstairs, I dressed slowly. The suit was a deep blue that looked almost black in shadow and like ink at the edges where the light hit. The silk blouse had a collar that did not fight my neck. The earrings were small and honest. I ran a comb over the soft grit of my scalp, then set the comb down. The mirror held a stranger who had my eyes. June watched me come down the stairs with a look that mixed pride and worry. She reached to fix a hem that did not need fixing. You look like a verdict, she said. Open the patio doors, I said. Let the lake in. By late afternoon, the rain had moved off. The air held a damp shine. The bulbs over the patio were already lit a low constellation. I walked the path through the yard and touched the wet leaves of the camellias. The cold rolled under my sleeves and up my arms. It felt clean. The first glass of champagne tasted like green apples and frost. A tech checked the microphone and set it aside. A wind lifted the table linens and then let them fall. Somewhere in the house, a clock chimed a quarter hour. The doorbell rang. June glanced at me. I nodded. She opened the door. Marjorie from 2 houses down stood there with a gift bag tucked under her arm. Her smile was pinned in place until she looked up and saw me across the room. The smile fell away. Her mouth opened and then closed. She stepped inside, then stopped halfway. Happy birthday, Evelyn, she said, soft and careful. I walked forward and took her coat. The cedar smell from the closet rose to meet me as I hung it on the wood hanger. The bulbs hummed. The lake breathed. I turned back to the room and felt the air shift in my favor, tiny and almost secret, as if the house itself had agreed. By 6, the house had its party face on. The bulbs over the patio made a low sky of their own, warm and sure. Servers slid through the kitchen with trays that smelled like lemon and butter. The lake outside breathed a silver calm. I moved among the rentals and flowers while people took their places as if they had always belonged here. The first wave of neighbors arrived with careful smiles and gift bags and tasteful paper. Marjorie drifted toward the champagne station and kept looking over her shoulder as if my head might change if she blinked long enough. 2 couples from the marina appeared all salt wind and knit scarves. Someone laughed too loud and cut the laughter short when they saw me. I handed coats to the closet and took a small pleasure in the good strong hangers the cedar blocks lined up like quiet guards. June managed the little urgencies that make a party look effortless. She marked a quick X in chalk on the patio, where the quartet would set up. She checked that the oysters were cold and that the tiny forks had the right shine. When our eyes met across the room, her look steadied me. It was a private tether in a crowded house. Carter returned just before 7 with the black folio under his arm. He smelled like rain and copy paper. In the pantry, he opened the zipper and showed me a clean envelope with a ribbon seal from his office. He set a twin envelope on the shelf near the bowls. His hand rested there a breath longer than most hands would have. Board names for the foundation are listed inside, he said. No one will ask about them tonight unless you choose to introduce them. Thank you, I said. You do not owe anyone explanations, he said. It was not a legal point. He left through the side door and blended into the line of trucks that were still packing out. The string quartet tuned. The notes sounded like someone testing the edge of glass. Servers began their rounds. Flavor moved through the house like a rumor. Crab toasts, pear and manchego, the fizz of the first poured bottle. I stood near the patio doors and let the cold air touch my scalp. It felt oddly honest. Guests clustered in familiar patterns. Bridge partners found bridge partners. Sailing people spoke in the grammar of weather. The text said people pointed at the lighting and guessed at the brand. Eyes flicked up and back to mine. It was a dance with steps everyone understood and no one wanted to admit. Marjorie came for conversation that pretended to be concern. She wore velvet and the smile she saved for gossip that dressed as charity. "Evie, dear, what on earth happened? It is quite a look." "It is," I said. "Have a pair. They did them right." She took one she did not want and bit it as if it might bite back. Her eyes kept darting upward. I could almost hear her assembling a story for next week. The manager appeared at my elbow with the gentle hush of a man who wore dark clothes for a living. He had a clipboard and a calm face. 7:15 is on cue, he said. "We will walk the champagne at 7:45. Your toast will be at 8. Would you like the mic by the piano or by the doors?" "By the doors," I said. "The lake helps." He nodded. He saw the envelope on the pantry shelf and did not ask. He moved away and reminded the staff to polish the lip of each flute with a fresh cloth. Watching him work felt like watching a watchmaker. Everything had its tick. My phone buzzed. "Mike." "Traffic on the bridge," his text said. 10 minutes. I typed nothing back. The bubbles in my glass climbed and broke. In the dining room, the empty frame caught a wash of light and looked almost gold, then gray again. I straightened it without thinking. The wood was smooth beneath my fingers. I liked things that could be made exact. People stopped me with short speeches. Some were sweet on the surface and sharp 1 inch below. Compliments have teeth when they ask a question without putting a question mark on it. "You are brave," a woman said, then flushed at her choice of word. "I am present," I said. "Good for you," a man offered, which told me more about him than about me. June slid in and saved me when the performance of kindness began to ring thin. She pretended to ask about the cutlery so I could step into the pantry and breathe. In there, the jars and tins made their mute rows perfect for giving. I touched the lid of the tea caddy and felt steadier. A breeze came off the lake and moved through the open doors. It lifted the napkins and made the bulbs over the patio swing very slightly. The quartet eased into something that did not insist on being known. The party found its hum. My scalp cooled and warmed by turns as bodies came and went. At 7:40, Carter nodded to me from a distance. It was a simple nod that said everything in his language. The servers took up trays heavy with flutes. The bubbles whispered in the glass. June slipped into the music room and adjusted a lampshade by a fraction. She did not need to. She knew what it meant to straighten something you could control. The door opened again. Mike stepped in with Tessa at his shoulder. He had his work jacket on, the one with the coffee stain at the cuff that he never noticed. Tessa was pale in a dress that usually made her sparkle. The room reacted before they knew it had. A shift in tone that only parties know how to make. Attention slid toward the entry and then away in a skirt of politeness. Mike saw me and stopped. His mouth shaped a greeting that did not make it into sound. Tessa's fingers tightened on his arm. She took one breath too shallow and then another. I crossed the room. The floor had a slight give where the rug ended. I noticed it because everything in my body had decided to notice details instead of meaning. "Mom," Mike said. "Ask your wife," I said, and let the words land without force. The color in Tessa's face changed by degree. She opened her mouth and closed it again. The cedar perfume she liked was faint tonight. It gave away the same shop as the paper and the ink. Her eyes went to my head, then to my eyes, then to the floor. "Evie," she said. The word had a shape I had not heard in her voice before, not authority, not charm, something stripped back and too honest to be useful to her. "Take a breath," I said to Mike, "then find a drink." He looked violated by the fact that he needed that instruction. He nodded and moved toward the bar with the jerkiness of a man who wants to run and cannot remember where to. Tessa did not follow him. She stood very still and held her clutch with both hands as if it would steady her. The clutch was a hard little rectangle with a gold clasp. It looked like a piece of punctuation. "Enjoy the party," I said, and walked away. In the kitchen, a server was struggling with a tower of macarons that wanted to list to one side. I steadied the top plate with one finger while she adjusted the base. She looked up at me, then at my head, and then back to her work. Her thank you was soft and grateful. It rinsed the taste of the entry hall from my mouth. Back on the patio, the lake had darkened to a deep slate and the lights bit bright. The quartet took a pause. The manager checked his watch. People had the faint teeter of a first drink that had landed. Conversation had picked up speed and was carrying its own weight now. I looked at all of it and felt the country of it in my bones. This was my house, my ground, my air to decide. June came to stand at my side. She slid her arm through mine for a moment, then let go. "They are ready," she said. "I know," I said. Carter set the microphone on its stand by the doors and leveled it to my height. He touched the cable. The sound man checked a dial on the small board and gave a tiny thumbs up. The manager met my eyes and tipped his head. The quartet fell silent. The party's noise drew in as if a tide had turned. Servers began to pass the champagne. The room shifted its attention the way people do when words are about to take a shape. I stepped onto the first stair to be seen above the line of shoulders. My glass was in my left hand. My right hand closed on the metal of the microphone. It was warm from someone else's work. I looked at June, I looked at the lake, I looked at nothing and everything. Then I breathed in and lifted the mic. The microphone had that faint smell of metal and someone else's hand cream. The room softened into quiet. Glass stems chimed in small accidents. I let the silence settle until it belonged to me. "Thank you for being here," I said. 70 is a good number for counting. A ripple of polite laughter moved and died. I did not swim after it. "You are wondering about my head," I said. "I am wondering about it too. Last night while I slept in my own bed, someone brought a clipper into my room and used it on me. The quiet turned a degree deeper. It had edges now. I held up the small cream card. The room could not smell it, but I could. Cedar and a faint sweetness that had no right to be part of this. This arrived with the act I said. The ink is green, the paper is textured. It is from a shop where the staff will emboss your initials while you wait." Eyes turned where eyes knew to turn. They landed on Tessa and slid away as if polite could hide intent. "I was going to give a gift tonight," I said. $5 million. I am not giving that gift." It made a sound, that sentence. Not in the air, but across the bodies in the room. A weight shifting, a muscle tightening. I set the card on the small table by the doors and took the sealed envelope Carter had placed in the pantry. The ribbon caught a glint of the patio lights. I held it up, not like a trophy, more like a declaration of an address. "This is my new will," I said. "Silver Harbor Foundation is established as of an hour ago. Its purpose is to serve older women who have experienced violence or abuse. Its first funds will come from what I would have handed over as a private gift." Marjorie gasped and clapped a hand to her mouth the way people do in movies. Someone at the back swore softly. The string players looked down at their instruments as if they could hide inside the wood. Mike moved. He looked like a man who has found himself at the wrong door. He came forward until he stood 3 steps from me. His voice was careful and failing. "Mom, what happened to you is awful, but this is a lot to do in a day." I turned the card so the words faced him and extended it. He reached out. His fingers brushed mine and felt colder than they should. He read. The color changed in his face. He looked up at me, then at Tessa. "Is this true?" he asked. His voice held to a shore that was moving. Tessa stood with both hands on her clutch. She nodded once and then tried to make her mouth find language. "I thought it would be a joke," she said. "It fell between us. It made no sense sitting there with the china and the flowers and the people we let into our house." "A joke is when someone laughs," I said. No one laughed. Tessa took a half step back. Her heel caught the edge of the rug. Mike reached for her and missed by an inch. His hand hung where her arm had been and then dropped to his side. "You could have told us privately," a man near the door said. He worked in something that required briefcases and practiced sympathy. "Everyone here would have known by morning anyway," I said. "You are not as discreet as you pretend to be." That got a few looks to the floor. It also got me what I wanted, the feeling that the room belonged to me again, not because of money or fear, because I would say things out loud. I lifted my glass. The bubbles lifted too and broke without noise. "To new beginnings," I said. "To telling the truth while we still remember it." June raised her glass without shaking. Carter did not raise his. He watched the room and let it show him what he needed to know. People drank. Some did not. The noise came back in increments. The quartet put bows to strings and made a soft landing. I stepped down from the stair and let the microphone fall to its rest. The manager caught it in his hands and set it on the stand with a professional ease. A server moved past me with a tray of champagne. I took one and then put it back. My mouth was too dry for sweetness. Tessa disappeared through the open doors to the lawn. The air outside had gone thin with evening. Mike followed, shoulders tight. Through the glass, I saw them in the garden light, 2 small people in a tidy storm. His hands moved in short chop motions. Hers stayed close to her body elbows in the way you brace for a blow that is not physical. I did not go to them. I walked the rooms. People talked at me and around me. Their words made sense and did not. I knew how to host. I let the machine of the party run because it had to run until it stopped. In the kitchen, a teenager polishing forks looked up with a kind of wonder. He had acne and the concentration of someone who wants to get it right. "Do you need anything?" he asked. I looked at the row of forks in his towel. Each had its own small shine. I looked at his young face that carried no part of tonight. "You are doing it right," I said. "Keep going." He nodded and smiled and went back to making small things perfect. By 10, the house had a used feel. The good kind that means people sat and stood and breathed inside it. The bad kind that leaves rings on wood and a temperature that feels like another person's breath. June began the gentle work of ending. Quiet cues to staff. Lights dimmed 1 point. The quartet packed their bows. Glass went away. The shore between party and house showed again. Mike came in from the yard alone. He had the look of someone who had run a long way without moving. He stopped at the doorway to my study. I was already there. I had turned on only the lamp with the linen shade. It made a small pool of gentle bright that did not argue with the dark around it. He stood at the edge of that light. He had been my baby once. I could see the ghost of that in the way his mouth tightened when he was trying not to cry. "I did not know she would do that," he said. "I swear." "I believe you," I said. "That is not the same as saying you have not been part of other things." He looked at the books. He looked at the family photos. He avoided my eyes like a man stepping around a hole. What other things, he asked, and the way he said it told me he was not sure he wanted the list. "The small ways you have let me be talked down," I said. "The jokes you did not laugh at but did not stop. The decisions you let live as if my opinion were a weather report and not a wall." He sat in the chair with the wooden arms. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands laced like a prayer he did not mean. "She can be cutting," he said. "You can be too." He winced as soon as the last part came out. He had not meant to say it. Or he had and had not meant to hear it aloud. I said. "I can also be generous. Both can be true." We sat with that. The house creaked in the way houses do when they cool after a crowd. I could hear ice melting in a glass in the other room. Someone in the alley rolled a bin to a curb. "I filed a report this morning," I said, "with the police." He lifted his head. For a moment he did not understand the words. Then he did. He stood up and then sat down because there was nowhere to stand that would help. "Mom," he said, "you will ruin us." "She is the one who took a clipper to my head while I slept," I said. "I am the one who woke up." "It was one night," he said, "one mistake. It was the night that told the truth about other nights," I said. He rubbed his face with both hands. He looked so much like his father in that moment that I had to look at the lampshade to keep my throat from closing. "You will regret this," he said. It came out small. It wanted to be a threat and did not have the bone for it. "If the choice is between regretting action and regretting silence," I said, "I have chosen." He stood. The chair made a little sound against the rug. He walked to the doorway and put his hand on the frame. For a heartbeat, he looked like he might touch my shoulder. He did not. He left without slamming anything. The house took him in and then let him go. I sat for a while and let the lamp make its circle. The envelope in the drawer felt like weight, even with the wood between us. I thought of the empty frame on the dining room wall. I went to it and stood close. In the reflection of its glass, I saw my face and the smooth crown of my skull. The bulbs over the patio made a row of moons across the dark lake. Somewhere on the island, a siren rose and fell. The sound came thin and alive through the air that had just held a party. I lifted my hand and the glass held it like a quiet. The next morning, the house held the smell of lilies and wet wool. My phone blinked with missed calls from numbers that did not belong to anyone I loved. I turned it face down and took my coat from the cedar closet. The lake path waited. Low clouds sat on the water as if they were tired. I walked until the cold found my knuckles and then kept walking. The sound of small waves against the rocks worked on me in a steady way. Rain at that hour fell like a habit the city did not know how to quit. I did not answer questions from neighbors who wanted to drop by or from a reporter who referenced courage twice in one voicemail. June handled the flowers and the rentals and the boxes. Carter sent a short message that the filings were confirmed. I boiled water and poured it over jasmine leaves and watched steam braid itself up and vanish. By the third day, Tessa asked to come. She wrote a text that had no decoration on it. She waited outside the gate until I buzzed her in. The porch still held the day's damp. I had set a pot of tea and 2 cups on the table by the door. She sat and folded both hands around the cup before she drank. Her nails were bare. The outline of exhaustion lived around her eyes. "I came to say I am sorry," she said. The sentence had no extra in it. I nodded. The rain softened and gathered itself again. "I do not know how to explain how I let that thought turn into an action," she said. "I had wine. I was angry. I felt I do not know, like a guest in my own life. I wanted to pull at something that seemed permanent and make it give." She looked at my head and flinched. It is monstrous when I say it out loud. I poured tea into my own cup. The green floral climbed the air and crowded out the cedar that had lived in my nose since the card. "Mike has complained to me about you," she said, "about feeling like he lives under a rule book he did not write. I took that and used it to build a case in my head. It suited me. My mother taught me to do that. She writes indictments of people as if she were hired to do it, and then reads them as if they were the only truth." The rain moved from steady to light. The lake was a dull pewter in the distance. The camellias shone the way the leaves shine when they are pleased with water. "I filed a report with the police," I said. "It is still there." "I understand," she said. "I will answer for it." We sat with the tea and the chill. There was a place where words could keep hurting the same way, and I did not want that place. I brought us both back from it by looking at something smaller. "Why did you marry him?" I asked. The first answer and the second one. "The first answer was love," she said. "The second one was safety." She looked at her hands and laughed once without humor. "I liked your house more than I admitted. I liked your competence so much that I started to hate it." We did not shake hands or hug when she left. She stood and thanked me for the tea and walked back under the arch of cedar that had been trimmed the week before. When she was gone, the porch felt colder, as if the vacuum of leaving pulled the heat with it. I called Carter from the pantry because I liked the way his name sounded against jars and tins. He picked up on the second ring. "I want to withdraw the complaint," I said, "and I want to amend the will again." He did not take a breath in surprise. He had a way of placing each word on a shelf. "State the changes," he said. "Half remains with Silver Harbor," I said. "Half goes to a trust in Mike's name. He can access it when I'm gone, but only to fund a new venture he leads, not a patch to something he already built. He must volunteer 10 hours a month with the foundation to keep eligibility." "Understood," he said. "I will bring drafts tomorrow." After I hung up, I went to the mirror in the hall where the light is kind. Hair had begun to press through at the crown like grass after frost. When I ran my palm up against the grain, it rasped, and then smoothed under the same hand. It was not the head I knew, it was the head I owned. Time turned without drama. Rain lifted and gave way to mornings that held light longer. June brought me to look at a house in Ballard with a wide porch and a good kitchen. The floor creaked in places that could be fixed. The upstairs had 4 small bedrooms that could be made warm with lamps and quilts. We walked the block and counted the steps to the bus line. We stood under the eaves and listened to a neighbor's wind chimes. One of the board candidates met us there, a woman named Karen, who had spent 20 years with social services and wore the calm of someone who had seen many emergencies and learned to lower her voice. She touched the banister and felt the polish the way I did. "This will work," she said. "The stairs can take lifts, the back door can take a ramp." I could see a kettle on the stove of that kitchen. I could see a woman sitting at the table with her hands wrapped around the mug, the way Tessa had just done. I nodded once and felt the click of a right decision. At home, I walked the lake trail in the evening. Gulls made their quick talk over the water. Teenagers did the loose-limbed bouncing of people who have not yet learned to walk as if someone were watching. The air had that Oregon grape smell that arrives when the rain warms. Mike asked to come over one Thursday when the sky was the color of wet slate and the chimneys worked. I set out 2 bowls and made soup that tasted like garlic and patience. He ate and then put the spoon down and did not reach for it again. "I have been angry at you," he said, in small drip ways that never got addressed. I let Tessa carry that anger for me. I did not stop her because the result suited me. I do not have a defense. "I can be too much," I said. "I can also be exactly enough." He nodded. His mouth trembled and then held. He took a folded paper out of his jacket and smoothed it on the table. "I have a thing," he said, "an idea. It is called Kin Nest." He explained the pieces in the plain language of a man who had stayed up to make them fit. A home screen with big tiles for hands that do not want to fumble. A button that would call the nurse line and share location. Contracts with grocery stores and caregiver agencies. Integration with voice assistants so people could ask for help without finding their glasses. A back end that would talk to a caseworker if one were assigned. He showed me wireframes. His pencil had worn spots from making the same lines better. He looked up at me only twice while he talked, and both times the question in his eyes asked if I could see what he saw. "Write the plan," I said. "Do the numbers. The board at Silver Harbor will hear it. I will not be in the room. If they approve, the foundation can take a minority stake." He closed his eyes for a beat as if the air had dropped back into his lungs. He nodded. "I will build it even if they do not," he said, "but I want it to be braided into real work." "It will have to earn that," I said. "It can." He looked younger when he left than when he had arrived. He forgot his scarf, and I let it hang on the banister to remind him to come back for it. Spring held, and then summer happened. The Ballard house took paint in a soft gray that looked better than it sounded. Beds went into rooms with quilts and colors that made sense together. A table in the kitchen held a jar of tea bags and a sign in letters cut from vinyl that read, "Take a seat," as if the seat belonged to them as much as to the chair. A phone line got installed, and a bell at the back door got a tone that did not startle. The first board meeting in the new office ran long because it had substance. Karen sat at one end. Ava, a finance mind who made everything look cleaner without stripping it, sat at the other. Ruth, a geriatric nurse practitioner with a voice that sounded like sleep at a good hour, sat to my right. We worked through bylaws and intake protocols. We set a rule about pets in the house that would spare us a fight later. Mike had worn a collared shirt without stains and had a notebook that looked new. He stood to present like a man who was not sure how much room his body should take. He walked through Kiness the way he had at my kitchen table, but tighter now, cleaner. He had numbers. He had a route to market that did not depend on miracles. He did not ask me to look at him. Their questions were kind and hard. How would data be stored? What happens when the panic button is pressed and no one answers? How do you measure trust when the users have good reason to mistrust all new things? He answered and admitted and wrote down what he could not answer yet. When he finished, Ruth smiled in a way that pushed the air toward yes. "We will not be your parent," Ava said. "We can be your partner." They voted. The motion carried. The note in Mike's notebook when he wrote the word approved landed dark. He sat. He shook my hand when I offered it like we were two people who had just met at a conference and might build something useful together. He told me about the pregnancy after that meeting when we stood by the kitchen sink and the sun came through in little squares on the floor. He looked bashful in a way I remembered from when he was 5 and had eaten the last cookie and wanted me to be the one to find out. "She is 3 months," he said, "October if the dates hold." A part of me that had closed to keep functioning opened and let light in without asking permission. I poured water into glasses we did not need and left them full and untouched. "Congratulations," I said. "Thank you," he said. He waited for me to say more and then did not ask for it when I did not. The weeks after that took on their own work rhythm. I drafted donor letters while a woman named Sheila, whose hands never stopped shaking, sat at the Ballard kitchen and drank tea without spilling. A man in a flannel coat learned how to ask for a ride to the doctor without apologizing. Volunteers brought muffins that were too sweet and new towels with tags still on. The house learned the sound of our footsteps and stopped complaining. One evening just before my birthday, the sky went the deep blue that only happens in October. I was sitting with a stack of foundation mail when my phone buzzed in that way that means urgency. Mike's name lit the screen. "Can you come to Swedish?" he said. "She is in labor. She wants you there." I took my coat and went out. The drive across the bridge felt like sliding a bead along a wire. In the elevator, my face in the mirror looked paler than I remembered. On the maternity floor, the lights were bright scrubbed of shadow. The hall smelled like sanitizer and baby powder under that. Mike met me at the nurse's station. He had a paper cap on his head and a wonder on his face. He led me down the hall. A door stood half open. A nurse with kind eyes looked out and nodded at me as if she had been expecting this exact person at this exact minute. The noise inside the room came in little waves and then went quiet. The door swung wider. The room was all white light and soft beeps. Tessa lay propped against pillows, a sheen on her forehead, a braid half undone. A nurse checked numbers that glowed green and smiled at me like I belonged. Tessa reached for me without pride. I took her hand. It was hot and dry and shaking. Mike stood on her other side with a paper cap and a look that had no space for anything but this. "Breathe with me," I said, "in for 4, out for 6. She matched my count. The contraction built and took her, and she climbed at jaw-set eyes on a spot over my shoulder. The nurse coached quietly. The doctor came in with the energy of someone who spends long nights making good things arrive. Between waves, Tessa turned her head. "If it is a girl," she said, voice thin and steady, "her middle name is Eve." I nodded. There was nothing to add. When it happened the way it does, sudden and inevitable. A wet cry split the air. The doctor held up a small, furious person, and the room changed temperature. Mike made a sound that was half laughter and half something older. Tessa cried without sobbing. The nurse worked quick and calm, then placed the bundle on Tessa's chest. Tiny breaths, a mouth like a pink leaf. "Lila Eve Reed," Mike said. He said it as if names had weight, and this one fit the shape of the child. They let me hold her. She was heavier than she looked. Warm in the way cooked stones are warm. She smelled like powdered sugar and cotton and something entirely her own. Her hair was a dark fuzz that lay flat against her skull. I said her name once, and she blinked as if she had heard it underwater. We did not take pictures. We made the moments and put them in the place where memory keeps them safe and untidy. A nurse adjusted the curtain for the 7th time. The machines hummed. The light stayed merciless and kind. Mike asked me to come home with them when the hospital released Tessa. I did. The apartment was smaller than the rooms we used for coat closets at my house, and it fit us just fine. I took the early hours so they could sleep in a clumsy rope of rest. I warmed bottles and corrected swaddles. Tessa learned one-handed tasks the way you can move a spoon and a baby at the same time, if you stop insisting on doing it the old way. Her mother sent a text that said, "Congratulations," and a photo of a resort. Tessa put the phone face down and did not lift it again. We found a rhythm that did not look like any rhythm I had known. Afternoon naps in a chair that creaked. Soup that tasted better the next day. The sound of the dryer in the hall outside their door. Mike took out the trash without being asked and started to ask how to help before there was anything to do. He practiced the baby's name under his breath, trying its weight in different rooms. On my 71st birthday, they brought Lila to my house in a carrier that looked like a shell. We did dinner for 4 with June tucked into a chair near the fire and a sleeping baby that made the room quieter by existing. After dishes, Tessa handed me a wrapped package. The paper was thick and soft as fabric, the same quality as the card on my nightstand that had started this. It did not smell like cedar. It smelled like ink and glue. Inside was an album. The cover was linen, the color of cream. The first page held a photo from the hospital in my hands, under Lila, like I was learning to hold a new instrument. The next pages were a stitching together of lives. Me in a cheap dress in the 70s, hair like a helmet, eyes trying to look older. Mike with a milk mustache on a back step, knees scraped and proud of it. Tessa on a beach wind in her hair, a grin that would have sold me anything. At the back, blank pages weighted with small lines at the corners where photo corners would go. For what we build next, Tessa had written in the space under the border. I put the album under the empty frame in the dining room and knew exactly where it should hang. The Ballard house opened on a Saturday when the sky could not decide on sun. We had 8 beds made with quilts and colors that did not argue. Karen stood on the porch with a clipboard and a sweater thrown over her shoulders and welcomed each woman by name. The kettle on the stove was kept just below boil. A bell at the back door made a soft sound. The first resident came with 2 bags and a single frame picture of a cat she had lost. She set the picture on the dresser and sat on the bed and cried without noise. Karen sat with her until the crying ran out. Ruth posted the intake numbers on the kitchen corkboard and underlined, "No one owes us a story." Mike volunteered on Wednesdays, his 10 hours broken into careful pieces that made him show up often. He sat at the long table and taught how to press the kin nest button without fear. He spoke slowly and held the phone so hands with arthritis did not have to bend. A woman named Dee pressed the panic button and watched the phone call the nurse line and said, under her breath like a child who has seen a coin trick. He logged bugs on his laptop and wore the look of a man who knows he is in the right place. We signed a letter of agreement that made Kinnest an official partner of Silver Harbor. Ava read every line twice. Carter nodded at the phrasing where it needed to be precise and kind. We took a photo on the porch that no one would frame, and that still mattered. Wednesday dinners settled into something that acted like tradition. Sometimes Tessa came, sometimes she stayed home. When she was there, she brought a salad that always had citrus and a way of talking about the baby that was specific and true. She asked for advice and sometimes did not take it. I learned how to keep my mouth closed when the urge to make things easier walked in front of me like a parade. I watched the 2 of them move as a pair who had learned their own angles. One morning in late autumn, the kind of morning where the light is thin and looks like it might break, I stood in front of the hall mirror and met my own eyes. My hair had grown into a shortcut that did not pretend to be anything else. Silver that caught the light and made my face look cleaner. I ran the comb over it once, then set the comb down near the sink. The act of not needing it felt like a small shift in weather. Outside the yard held beads of rain on the camellia leaves. The lake lifted itself into the air in a pale shimmer. In the kitchen, a new photo of Lila sat in a cheap frame near the kettle. Her mouth open in a howl of surprise, her hands fisted in triumph over nothing. I put water on and watched the steam braid and unbraid itself into the air. The smell of jasmine arrived and sat with me. The phone rang. Mike. "We are coming over if you are home," he said. She slept and woke and pointed at the door, which is new, and I think it means she wants an audience. "I am here," I said. I hung up and took the album from the sideboard. I lifted the empty frame from the wall and set it on the table. I slid the album into its place and felt the click of wood on nail the way a house agrees with you when you pick the right height for a picture. I went to the den and opened the drawer. The envelope with the ribbon seal waited where I had left it. I touched it and closed the drawer again. It was enough to know it was there. The tea steamed. The house breathed. A gull made a bright line of sound over the water. Tires hissed on wet pavement outside. Then a light knock. Then the squeak of stroller wheels on my front step. I carried the tray to the living room, set it down, and went to the door. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story. I'll see you next time as we continue exploring more journeys and lessons together.